We're going to make our opponents discard their whole hands. Combo at the end of the video. You've been warned. Welcome back to the Tutoring Magic channel. I'm Steve, the Acteria. Today we are talking about Lord Xander again, but this is by a special request from my friend Spencer. Link in the description below if you want to follow along on this lovely little romp through the woods. So he asked me to build him a Lord, not actually build him a Lord Xander deck. He asked me to build him a Wrath deck, a deck that would personify him as a person, and I decided to go ahead and choose Lord Xander. But before we get into that, I want to let you know we're sponsored today by MTG On Command. They are this sweet company that's making these 3D printed deck boxes, and they're just now getting to a place where they are starting to manufacture these the good old-fashioned way with 3D injection molded, and so they're really excited about the launch of that. Also, link in the description below if you want to check out my Patreon. We're doing custom proxies over there for every subscriber, and I really would love to see you over there if you have any interest. Anyway, let's get into the video. Wow. Talking too long, Steven. Talking too long. All right, so if you're not familiar with Lord Xander, I've already done a video about him on this channel. Go back, link in the description below for information about that previous video. Not all of those cards that were in that video are going to make it in today's video, but today is a pretty good primer for if you want to get on the ground and running. This should help. So Lord Xander is a 7-drop, 6/6 Vampire Demon Noble. He says whenever he enters the battlefield, target opponent discards half the cards in their hand, rounded down. Whenever he attacks defending player, mills half their library, rounded down. Whenever he dies, target opponent sacrifices half the non-land permanents they control, rounded down. I don't have to tell you that that's pretty disgusting. Just an enter the battlefield, an attack trigger, all of that fun stuff. Fantastic. Mwah. Okay, so let's talk about this guy. So I wanted to let you know that we have a 35 mana base. This can be adjusted to fit your needs, whatever it is you've got. We're not going to go into too much detail on that. Let's get. All right, so really quick, I do want to show you what is over there, though. We've just got some Blood Crypts, some fetch lands, some Cascade Bluffs. We've also got some of the Karoo lands, the ones that bounce to your hand. These are in case, like, if you're having to discard cards, a Dimir Aqueduct will, in essence, be a 2-for-1. So if you have to bounce a land, well, you've still got 2 mana in play. And if you had to discard that card for any reason, whatever reason, maybe some discard effect from your opponents, these Karoo lands actually really help us. So I really love running these. Not everybody, not the top level of CDH play will they run these ever unless they're playing a lands deck, but I really enjoy them. Also, the check lands from, I believe, I want to say Innistrad, and before that they were in a core set. These check lands are also really good because we're going to be fetching up basically, you know, Blood Crypt and things like that. These check lands will come into play untapped. Now, further down here, we've got an Exotic Orchard, just good mana fixing, Fabled Passage, etc., etc. Filter lands. We've got all of that. Luxury Suite, the new ones. If you don't have these, I mean, it's only $7 for these. You should get them like while they're in print. Go get those, okay? So we've got a good mana base. It's a really solid mana base. And from the looks of it, there's not a whole lot in the way of utility lands in this deck. In fact, now that I look at it, I don't have a single utility land. If you wanted to include like a Bajuka Bog or a Rogue's Passage in here, absolutely great. I just really don't like playing utility lands in a 3-color deck because that colorless mana really hurts the mana base. Okay, so Lord Xander himself likes to be put into play and then reanimated, those kinds of things, right? So sometimes you're just gonna let Lord Xander go to the graveyard because, like, after he dies, you don't care. You've already wrecked one of your opponents. You're just in a good place, okay? So let's talk about the main function of the deck. So if you'll notice, we have Animate Dead. Oh, well, let's fix that, shall we? We have Animate Dead over here. When it enters battlefield, it enchants basically a creature in graveyard, and that creature comes back into play. And then whenever Animate Dead leaves the battlefield, that creature is sacrificed, and enchanted creature gets -1, -0. Pretty straightforward. You get rid of Animate Dead, that creature goes away. But if you if you happen to target a Lord Xander with it while he's in the yard, if you happen to go and attack with Lord Xander, then sacrifice him for whatever reason, you're going to still get that death trigger. It's fantastic. Just go reanimate him again. So we're going to have a lot of those effects. Dance of the Dead. Now, it says enchant dead creature, basically animate the dead. It says take target creature from any graveyard and put it directly into play under your control, tapped with a 1/1 counter. Treat that creature as though it were just summoned. Treat the creature as though it were just summoned. That creature does not untap during its controller's untap step. At the end of his or her upkeep, its controller may pay an additional black and generic to untap it. If Dance of the Dead is removed, or the creature owner's graveyard. Okay, so we can pay to untap this creature. It doesn't untap normally, so it's a little bit harder to get around, but it's still a fantastic card because it's just 2 mana, put the creature in play. Now, another way that we're going to do that is something like Necromancy. You can choose it to play it as an instant if you want to, but if you do, you have to bury it. Whenever you play it, choose our creature card in your graveyard, put it into play as though we're just summoned, and then this enchants the creature. If Necromancer leaves the battlefield, bury the creature. Okay, so next up we also have, let's see, we've also got some Beacon of Unrest, which is just a good old-fashioned, this is an expensive, not a CEDH card specifically, but it does say for 5 mana, we are going to put our artifact or creature card from our graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. As you can tell, we're going to do a lot of reanimating. That is a lot of what the deck does. So, with that comes the, we've got Exhume, which you have to be very careful of in case they have something in their graveyard. We also have Persist, which puts a non-legendary creature, so anything other than our Lord Xander. We have Reanimate. This is any creature, any graveyard, puts it onto the battlefield, and we lose life equal to its converted mana cost. This is still amazing. We don't care about losing 7 life to play Reanimate. It's amazing. Unmarked Grave. Okay, so Rise of the Dark Realms just does it. Put all creatures from all graveyards on the battlefield under your control. It's pretty fantastic because we're going to be playing things like Damnation. I think we even have a Toxic Deluge, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, don't seem to have it in here, but you could certainly put Toxic Deluge. Damnation is just going to destroy all creatures. So, we have a lot of creatures in the graveyard. We're actually going to put a lot of creatures in the graveyard with things like Cathartic Reunion. For 1 red and 1 generically discard 2 cards and draw 3 cards. It's fantastic. And then also another one that's in blue. For 1 blue, draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards from your hand. This is amazing. It's a Faithless Looting without flashback. And the Faithless Looting says draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards, flashback for 3. Awesome. Both of these, all 3 of these cards are really fantastic in what we're doing. Now, let's just talk about, that's how we get cards from our hand into our graveyard. Let's talk about cards that we use to get from our library into our graveyard. A good old-fashioned Buried Alive. For 3 mana, we get a Search Your Library for up to 3 creature cards and put them into your graveyard, then shuffle your library. This is fantastic. It's like a tutor for 3 cards. Put them exactly where we want them, and then we go to town by reanimating them. Fantastic. Now, another one that we have for that is also, before we get there, we also have, I just saw it, Unmarked Grave. This will also search your library for a non-legendary card, any card, and put that card in your graveyard, then shuffle for a sorcery. A black and a generic. That's pretty good. It's not as good as our Numero Uno, also part of a kind of a combo, if you will. Later we'll talk about it. Entomb. 1 black instant says search your library for a card, put that card in your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Fantastic. As I always say, graveyard's the most broken zone in the game. I didn't say that at first. Somebody else did. I don't remember. Anyway. Okay, so we've got ways to put our creatures into graveyards. We have got ways to bring our creatures back from the graveyards. We have got all kinds of goodness. Now, what else can we do? We also have Frantic Search. Draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards and tap 3 lands. Fantastic. Now, what about these targets, oh Stephen of mine, oh friend of my heart? Well, it's a funny you should mention that, because we just went out and found all of the greatest goodies in the Grixis colors. Agent of Treachery. Agent of Treachery is just going to, is going to gain control of target permanent when it enters the battlefield. It's a 7-drop, so normally we're not going to cast it on its own. But it says at the beginning of your step, if you control 3 more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. We reanimate this dude in several different ways. Pretty fantastic. And then we have Ancient Brass Dragon. He says whenever he deals combat damage, roll a d20, put any number of target creature cards with total mana value X or less from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, where X is the result. Yes, please. Then we have Ancient Silver Dragon, which is going to say roll a d20. Whenever he deals combat damage, draw cards equal to the result. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. We'd rather not play 8 mana for him. Let's just reanimate. Then let's see. We have Atali. Atali is just so fun. It's a 6-drop. We could just cast him normally. Anyway, he's a 6-mana 6/6, and he's an Elder Dinosaur. He says whenever he attacks, exile the top card of each player's, include our own, each player's library. You may cast any number of those spells from among those cards without paying their mana cost. So we might accidentally just exile an ancient silver dragon from the top of our library and put it into play with a tally. Pretty sweet. Then let's see. We also have Grave Titan, a big beater. Then we also have Jin-Gitaxias. He says he's a 10-drop, 5/4 flash. It says at the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. Ooh, he's gross. He's the old school one. But I think the one that's worse is Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. It's a 7-drop 5/5. Whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. So if we happen to go Exhume or Animate Dead, or oh wait, no, it says artifact. Okay, Exhume, Reanimate, any of that kind of stuff, or Persist. Those things are going to get copied, and we're going to get to target 2 things in our graveyard and bring them back to play. Fantastic. When an opponent casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, counter that spell. This ability triggers only once each turn. So it makes it really, really hard for people to cast instants and sorceries and artifacts, which means they have a hard time interacting with what we're doing. Pretty good. Let us see. Massacre Worm, another big beater that melts the board. Gives everything -2, -2 until end of turn, and whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. It could just be a huge swing, especially against elf decks. Let's see. Runescarred Demon is another one that's just really, really key. So if we have a certain combo piece that we want to go find, this is a 7-drop 6/6 flying. This is whenever it enters the battlefield, search your library for a card, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. Thank you so very much. I will go get the best card out of my library. Fantastic. Sepulchral Primordial, it's a 7-drop again, 5/4, Intimidate. He says it enters the battlefield. For each opponent, may put up to 1 target creature card from the player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Fantastic. Now we also have Shieldred. If you're not familiar, at the beginning of your upkeep, you return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, and at each opponent's upkeep, they sacrifice a creature. She's a 7-drop 6/6 with Swamp Walk. Fantastic. Now we also have Thassa Deep Dwelling. So Thassa Deep Dwelling is an interesting one. We're going to have a lot of in-step triggers that either maybe remove our creature from the game after they've attacked, or maybe they sacrifice that creature. So Thassa can get put on the stack too, so since we stack our triggers. Let's talk about one of those triggers that we might want to work with her. But anyway, she's a 4-drop, 6/5. She says as long as your devotion blue is less than 5, she is a creature, and you reinstep exile up to 1 target creature, other target creature you control, and return that creature to the battlefield under your control. And she can tap a creature. Whatever. Anyway, so let's think about this. We have some other ways of putting big, beefy creatures directly into play. And one of those ways is one of my favorites. That is Sneak Attack. Sneak Attack is a 4-drop enchantment. It says for 1 red, you may put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Sacrifice the creature at the beginning of the next end step. So that sacrifice trigger is a delayed trigger that gets put onto the stack at the end step. It will get put onto the stack. Now, also, Thassa Deep Dwelling says at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 other target creature you control. So rather than having to sacrifice our creature from Sneak Attack, we can stack the triggers in such a way that we just exile them from the game and immediately bring them back to play. Fan-freaking-tastic. It's really good with Solemn Simulacrum, which draws a card, and whenever it dies, or sorry, that goes against the basic land. That's fantastic. It's kind of cute. Or we can also go and get Agent of Treachery again. Just stealing another permanent. Just go to town. Sneak Attack him into play. Thassa is going to exile him and bring him back into play. You're going to go get another permanent, and then your next turn you can go steal something else. It's fantastic. Now, there is another way we can do this sort of thing, and there is Felon of the Third Path. Okay, it says for a 3-drop you get a 2/3 Human Artificer. For 3 and tap, create a treasure. Create a token that's a copy of target creature card in your graveyard, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. It gains haste, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. This is not one of those we can flicker, but it's still a really great way of using our graveyard to our advantage, especially with things like Ancient Dragons, the Atali, Grave Titans, all of those things that get attack triggers. Fantastic. Also, another one kind of in that same vein. This one kind of feeds our graveyard and also does nasty. For a 4-drop, you get a 2/3 human warrior that says pay 1 red, tap, discard a card, create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control. It gains haste when this creature dies, draw a card, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, activate only as a sorcery. Now, what's interesting about this, so we discard one of our big creatures that we don't have a use for right now. So like for instance, we discard Ancient Silver Dragon to it, okay? And we copy with Grixis, so we're discarding the Ancient Silver Dragon. We're going to create a token of, say, Agent of Treachery, who's just in play. Fantastic. If we want to get a little bit more disgusting, say we have our commander in play, okay? Now he says whenever he enters the battlefield, target opponent discards half of the cards in their hand, rounded down. And whenever he dies, target opponent sacrifices half the non-land permanents they control, rounded down. Now, what's interesting about this is that if we target Lord Xander, it says create a token that's a copy of another target creature you control, gains haste when this creature dies, draw a card. We can take advantage of the legend rule. So we have Lord Xander in play, then we make a copy of it with Grixis. That one of the copies, either the copy or the original Lord Xander, must be sacrificed at instant speed. We choose which one to pick. I'm probably going to keep the copy because the copy is not reanimatable, so we can't like reanimate it later. So I'm probably going to sacrifice my normal commander and then keep the copy. But my commander, whenever it gets sacrificed, is still going to get its death trigger, and the new one is still going to get its enters the battlefield trigger. So I'm going to get to sacrifice one of them and then keep the other one, and then that copy that I made is going to get sacrificed at the end step and then make them sacrifice half their permanents again. It's fantastic. After I go attacking and milling them for half their library. It's so good, so good. All right, from here, we've got a lot of other things that just kind of help us stay alive. For instance, you'll notice we have Fierce Guardianship. If we control our commander, it's free. It's a 3-drop counter spell. It says counter target non-creature spell. Counter that Day of Judgment. Counter that counter spell itself. Pretty fantastic. Oh, sorry about that. We also have a Cyclonic Rift. Why not? It's the best blue card in Commander, which will return target non-land permanent to don't control to its owner's hand, and we can overload it. Okay? Basically, we can return all non-land permanents all over our opponent's control at instant speed, type of mana. So good. Or you should win after you cast that, for the record. Chaos Warp, it's just good business. It gets rid of anything. In Grixis, we don't have a whole lot of enchantment removal. This is enchantment removal. It says for 1 red and 2 generic, the owner of target permanent shuffles it into their library and reveals the top card of their library. If it's a permanent card, they put it on the battlefield. If it's not, it just stays on top. Okay, Bedevil. Fantastic. It says destroy target artifact, creature, or planeswalker. Or planeswalker at instant speed for 3. Yes, please. Thank you. Long Song is a 1-drop counter target instant sorcery or enchantment. They get a 2/2 bird. Don't care. Have your bird. Fantastic. Terminate. Good old fashioned destroy target creature. This is probably the first piece you take out if you want to change it out for something else. Let's see. Flame Shadow Conjuring. This one's an interesting one. I forgot to mention it with making other things. This is 4-drop enchantment. It says whenever a non-token creature enters battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. We can copy our commander. Get the ETB of that copy, let it die, and keep our regular commander. So good. Similarly, we could do that with any of the ancient dragons, because these ancient dragons, that copy gets to go attacking immediately, and then we get to go and get our draw the cards and no maximum hand size, all that stuff. Go reanimate a bunch of stuff. It's pretty amazing. Let's see what else we got. Teferi's Veil. This one's interesting. So, Teferi's Veil is a 1 blue, 1 generic. This is whenever any creature you control attacks and phases out at end of combat. This is amazing because we can go attacking, phase all of our creatures out, and then play Damnation Because our creatures don't exist. Oh, by the way, if you sneak attack something into play and then you phase it out, it doesn't exist whenever this trigger happens. Then you get to your next turn and you get to keep your creature. Similarly, if you have Teferi's Veil and you phase out a token from, say, Flame Shadow Conjuring, tokens don't leave the game whenever they get phased out. They're just not in existence until your next turn. So tokens will stay around. So this Flame Shadow Conjuring token, after it goes attacking, you get to keep it with Teferi's Veil because you're going to phase it out, and then you get to just have that token. So good. Also, we've got Mystic Remora, Mystic Study. These are drawing cards. When a opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless the player pays 1 for 3 mana. It's an enchantment. Fantastic. Mystic Remora for 1 blue. It says whenever a target opponent or any opponent that's been errated says cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. That player may pay 4 to counter this effect. It also has a cumulative upkeep of 1. So first turn, the next turn that you have it at your upkeep, you have to pay 1 to keep it around. The second turn, you have to pay 2, 3, 4, etc. Got it. All right, so the rest of the deck is there's a lot of signets over here. I thought that they were going to be just ways that we keep our mana fixed and we get to ramp. Say we need to, why don't we just cast this big dumb stuff? Another one that's cool tech that I really like is a lot of these end of turn things. You can pay 1 generic and tap end the turn. Activate this ability only during your turn. So if you want to say you've got the sneak attack. Right. So you've got the sneak attack trigger, right? You've put something big into play with sneak attack. Well, if you end the turn before the end step begins, you don't have to sacrifice that creature. Similarly, if you end the turn before the end step, you don't have to sacrifice your token. Now you get to keep your token or the thing that you sneak attacked into play. Oh, so good. So good. I got you. Love it. Anyway, so there's a lot of other cool stuff in here. Go check out the video that I've also put up in case you were looking for other cool tech that you can put into this deck. Not everything made it in, as I said earlier, but I thought this was really good. We also have Blasphemous Act, Damnation. Oh, that's why we have Blasphemous Act and Damnation, and not Toxic Deluge. Feed the Swarm, we also have that. It's really good. And then we also have Windfall. Interestingly enough, this is a really fun card in this because each player discards their hand, then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So for 3, we'll just toss our hand, get a new one. We'll put all of those big beefy creatures we wanted in the graveyard into the graveyard, and then draw a new hand. It's fantastic. It's amazing. Hold on. So I forgot my combo. Gotta tell you the combo. All right. So if you'll notice, we have 1 copy of Dark Ritual, which is for 1 black. We will put 3 black mana into our mana pool. Okay. What am I going to do with that mana on turn 1? Interesting. So what I might do is I might cast an Entomb. Search my library for any creature and putting it into my graveyard. Or any card, but in this case a creature. So I've spent 1 black mana of my 3. Then I will also go down here and find my favorite target on turn 1 is Sire of Insanity. He is a 6-drop 6/4. That says D. It says at the beginning of each end step, each player discards his or her hand. So on turn 1, just put this guy into our graveyard. We have 2 mana left available. Now, what am I going to play for 2 mana? I am going to cast either Exhume. Return. Each player puts a creature card from their graveyard onto the battlefield. Or Animate. Or Persist. Or where did it go? Animate Dead. Dance of the Dead. Necromancy. No, not Necromancy. Anyway, all of those other 2 drops. So now, on turn 1, we have put Sire of Insanity into our graveyard and then put him into play directly, which means at the end of our turn, at each end step, each player discards his or her hand. End of my turn, on turn 1, my opponents with 7 cards in their hand must discard. All the way down to 0. It makes me so happy. Anyway, thank you all so much for coming out. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Again, there's a link in the description below for 10% off your first purchase. from MTG On Command. They're a really great company, and they're going to a fully manufactured version of this, and they're really, really cool. You get to show off your commander. I'm really excited about this because this means that I get to go and try out their new product whenever they get to getting that finally put onto the market. Also, link in the description below for my Patreon if you have any interest. Super, super appreciate that. And I love you guys. Couldn't do this without you.